right, y'all. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's so good to be here in my favorite part of town, the lovely West Charlotte. Born and raised here, so I'm excited to be home. My name is Jamila Green, and I serve as the Community Engagement Manager here for YWCA. And I have the, yes, clap for YWCA. Yes. And I have the honor of creating and curating different programs around racial justice and advocacy, not only for the community, but I try to do stuff for our staff too. So I do a little bit of everything, along with 1,000 million different hats that I wear. We talked about that before we got started. So I'm grateful for the position I'm in. I'm grateful to be in a space where I can do work like this and invite amazing panelists to come in and disrupt. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. Let's disrupt, let's talk, let's have real conversations when it comes to race in society. Before I get started, I have to say thank you to one of our sponsors, Google Fiber, who has blessed us with a sponsorship. So clap it up for Google Fiber. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. And of course, I have to shout out the public library. We are in the Allegra Westbrooks Library, which she's a historic figure in the community. So it's great to be in a space doing this type of programming in this space. So awesome. Just want to give you a little bit of background. We do this annual event normally in the month of April, which is my favorite month. That's my birthday month, y'all, so it's just different. But in April, we do a series of events, and it's entitled Until Justice Just Is, which gives us the opportunity as an organization to really lean into our mission, which is to empower women and eliminate racism. And my favorite thing to say is literally, we like to look at the intersectional nature of our mission and look to find ways to explore and have conversations around issues that women of color, specifically Black and brown women of color, face on an everyday basis. So it's, like I said, it's my pleasure to do this work. But specifically in April is when we get deep down into it. And so this month, and this year, we are focusing on mental health specifically. More specifically, post-traumatic slave syndrome, which I don't know, my cousin is probably on the live stream, but years and years ago, my cousin Crystal actually sent me a message on Instagram. It was like, have you heard of P.T.S.S? And I was like, I have never heard of this, but it's extremely, extremely important and impactful, and I just couldn't stop finding stuff about it. I couldn't stop reading about it and how relevant it was for my community and my ancestors and the way I move forward as a person in this space. So it just made more than too much sense to actually have a conversation around it and invite amazing, I don't even know, I gotta give you flowers while y'all here. Amazing women into the space to have this discussion. And so I'm excited to welcome Raquel Ward. Yes, you can welcome Raquel. You love her while you're here. For more reasons than one. We have Isis Bey, who we love her too. Dr. Sonya Richardson. Yes. And we have our amazing moderator, Ashley Peterson here. And special shout out to NAMI, because NAMI actually connected us with Ashley. And so if it wasn't for NAMI, we would not have Ashley. So we appreciate that. So yes, so throughout the conversation, you all might have received like a cue card, a note card. And what we're gonna do is ask that if you have questions, please write it down on the note card. And we have a few of my friends from the P team, from our philanthropy team, walking down the side aisles to grab those cards for you. And we're gonna try our hardest to answer 2 to 3 at the end of the discussion, okay? So I appreciate y'all, and I look forward to seeing you guys at additional events in the summertime, which we'll talk about later. But for now, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Ashley, who will get us started. Thank y'all.
And Jamila, did you want us to do just some quick intros, or how did you want us to?
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. I'm very just conversational, so I just want to make sure we're running it the way that you all get the most out of this evening. So as Jamila said, my name is Ashley Peterson. I am joining this panel as as moderator from NAMI Charlotte's Board of Directors. And I am actually in transition of into an entrepreneurial journey of kind of having open conversations like this. So really excited for NAMI and the YWCA for allowing me to do this. As we go into this panel, I just want to kind of reiterate what Jamila said around just disrupting, being transparent, having those open conversations. And for me, I remember telling my cousins after kind of thinking through my own mental health journey, what was most important to me of my healing process. I was like, someone has to be doing this research. Had no idea this was going on. So I'm excited to learn just as much as all of you. And that starts me off with my first question for Dr. Sonya. What is...
Can I ask, since we're talking about ancestors today,
Yeah.
and we're opening this, can we do that and honor those that came before us?
Yes, of course.
Can we disrupt that?
Mm-hmm.
Because we jumped in it,
Yes.
and we're talking about them, and we
Yes.
didn't even give honor to them.
Yeah.
So we can take a moment
Yeah.
and give honor to those that came before us, that we're saying that we're speaking on. If any of you are comfortable enough, when we're doing traditional dance and anything traditional, it comes from our head and also our heart, right? Our heart, and anytime we see African dance, we touch the floor, it means for those that came before us. So we're honoring those who return back. So if you feel comfortable or so moved, do that, but just hold space. Because we're talking about a thing, like we go into the communities to help people and we didn't ask nobody. So let's give them a moment. We have elders in the room. Anyone 60 and over? Thank you. We ask your permission to move forward with this program.
Go ahead.
I share.
I appreciate that is a necessary disruption, so thank you for letting us pause, making sure we pause. So the first question that we will take is actually defining P.T.S.S. So what is the definition of post-traumatic slave syndrome, and how would you say it manifests and impacts our community?
So hi family, I am Sonya Richardson, and just a little bit about who I am. So I am a assistant professor at UNC Charlotte. I teach social work in the School of Social Work, and my research is focused on Black communities. I'm an unapologetic Black researcher. So everything I do is for the Black community. And I also own a mental health agency here in Charlotte that I've owned and operated for 16 years. So I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years. I have 2 sons. I'm married to a wonderful husband who's an entrepreneur here as well. He's the only Black prosthetist in North Carolina. So he works with amputees. And I have 2 sons, one in college, he's a freshman, and one that's a senior. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today and to discuss this topic. So, and I have some friends, some alumni, some sorors, I see sorors in the room. So yes. So it's a pleasure to be here. So the question is, what is post-traumatic slave syndrome and how does it manifest? That is such a loaded question and lots to say to it. So first I want to frame that we are speaking about post-traumatic slave syndrome from this book that was published by Dr. DeGruy. And she is the one who framed post-traumatic slave syndrome. So we are speaking from the perspective of a Black female scholar. So I just want to make that known and acknowledge her work. So according to Dr. Joy, because we're going to use her definition to frame this, post-traumatic slave syndrome includes 3 elements. So you have to have 3 primary things. One is multi-generational trauma. So generational trauma from ancestors over multi-generations. So it's trauma that's passed down. So it's multi-generation plus continued oppression. Okay, so when a group of people continue to experience oppression, meaning that it's difficult for them to advance, they have limited power, access, etc. When you have continued oppression, and then the last thing is the absence of opportunity to access the benefits available in society. So not only does this population or population experienced in post-traumatic slave syndrome have multi-generational trauma and continued oppression, but there's a lack of access to opportunity. So even when you try to go after what you want to go after and go after your goals, there can always be that lack of opportunity. So I'm trying my hardest, I'm doing my best. I went back and got all this experience and education, and I still can't get that job, or I still can't get that position. So not only am I dealing with all of those things, but I'm also dealing with the lack of access. And then that creates post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is a syndrome of different, not disorders, I hate to call it disorders, but different characteristics and qualities. So how does it manifest? And I'm just gonna share my perspective. I'd love to hear what the other panelists have to say. How does it manifest? It manifests in a lot of different ways. One that Dr. DeGruy speaks about is this ever-present danger. So the feeling and expectation that there's always danger pending. So you're always cautious, looking out, paranoid, suspicious, untrusting. You find yourself experiencing those things, and it creates an ever-present anger. It's like an anger that's under the surface. And so, for example, my family last week, my mom is aging, and one of the things she wants to do is travel before she turns 80. She has this thing in her mind, I have to travel before 80 because my friends told me once I turn 80, I can't travel, right? And so we went on a trip. So we did a trip, right? And we were on the trip, and we were having a great time. And I was relaxed, and I was at the beach, and I was happy. And then my niece got back some test scores, which was a standardized test, which has low pass rates for Black people. And so she didn't pass. And so internally, I'm thinking to myself, here's another damn test that was not set up for Black people to pass. So now my niece is feeling incompetent, and there's nothing incompetent about her. She's brilliant, but the test was not meant for her to pass. So now I got this stewing anger, and I'm happy, and I'm at an island. I went to Aruba for the first time, so I'm having a great time, but I'm pissed, and I'm angry. And it's that ever-present anger. And it's what some of us experience because of the continued oppression, the multi-generational trauma, and the lack of access and opportunity. And so it's a constant reminder day in and day out that you don't have that opportunity. Another way it manifests, and I'm gonna move the mic on, but another way it manifests is with, I find it oftentimes with my kids. So with my children, so I told you I have 2 boys, and they're brilliant Black boys. And I have always had to fight for them in school to get access to AP classes, yes, to get access to anything that was in the school system, right? I've always had to fight for them. And I have found myself as a mother, despite being a social worker and somebody who advocates for other people, I have found myself at times feeling the need to downplay their brilliance. And I downplay it as a form of protection for them. So for example, I'm at the university speaking to another professor who's white, and she can talk about her kids and the great stuff that they're doing. And then when I talk about my kids, I sometimes would feel the need to downplay it because I didn't want her to get jealous, because then I didn't know what repercussions might come about from me talking about my kids. Because our kids were competing against each other for some of the same scholarships. And so I found myself being very cautious with what I shared, because I realized in my mind, not everybody can really handle the success of a Black family.
Yes.
And so that to me is a manifestation of the trauma that we've experienced. Even when we're successful, even when my family is successful, there's a need within me to protect my family. And the protection is to make sure that they're not seen as too successful. Because back in slavery times, if we were too successful, we got sold. That's right. So we learned how to downplay our success to protect our family and our kids. That to me is that multi-generational trauma that I still carry, that I have to check myself on to say, am I really protecting my kids? Or am I going along with society and invalidating their brilliance? And so that's some of the manifestation.
Peace and blessings, family. Let's see. Do we need it for the streaming?
The microphone? It's whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. I have a voice, y'all, and I use it well. It is an honor to be here. I am Isis Bey. I am a mama. I have 11 that are mine, 6 I birthed, and a grandbaby. I am a lot of things. I'm unapologetically a Black queen. I love me now. I value me now. I'm an adjunct professor at multiple universities. I own Harmony Health Therapeutic Services, which is also a mental health practice, sister practice of my sister here. We offer culturally responsive services that are served through social justice, anti-racism, and all the things. A lot of my graduate work is in anti-racism and disparate numbers and systems. I am a trainer, so I also own IAB Consulting. I'm a national trainer in which we do this work and this type of work, traveling through the nation and speaking. I'm a social worker, y'all. That's right, throw them up. I'm a villager, right? I connect with family. I'm a collectivist, not an individualist. I practice collectivism, and I honor what I say, and I walk in that. Our agency serves in that model. I'm currently a PhD student in public health and behavioral and health disparities, disrupting, creating an intervention, a healing-centered and trauma-focused model. I'm a nationally certified advanced trauma specialist, gang specialist, and all the other things. There's a whole list, right? This is one of my favorite topics because I talk about it probably all day, every day, in disrupting oppression. I am a disruptor, y'all. Is everyone in here except the babies? We're gonna get them some mercy and grace. We got some earplugs for them. Is everybody in here? Grown folk? Okay, because I'm multilingual. I speak multiple languages, and we're gonna talk about that because that comes out of oppression. Ain't no such thing as a damn proper language. Any language spoken within community is a proper language. So I'm not gonna go and re-describe what I'm gonna add on to the impacts. That's one. We tell our families, you better speak proper. That's a lie, 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 lie. That's a lie. That comes out of power, control, and oppression. The way to oppress and what happened through enslavement is you replace a people's culture, their traditions, their spirituality, and their language with that of a dominant culture. And you enforce it through violence, and psychological warfare, and torture, and all of the things. I use grown-up language. If you need some fancy language and the fancy words, let me know. I'm great at translating. That is how it impacts us. Because we've told our children, if you don't speak right, don't you speak that ghetto shit up in here. Instead of speak the language of the community. Speak the language of the institution. Because when you travel outside Western culture and you go back east, language is very direct. There's several dialects, and no one tells somebody to speak what I speak. We don't demand they change it, because we choose. We choose if we want to barter or trade or integrate into a community. That's when we decide to learn another language. Otherwise, they function. No, you can't. That's a lie. Lie, lie. I took my children to Cuba, to Ghana, and to other countries, and they fared just well without knowing the language. They played, they had harmonious relationships, they understood. I was like, how do you know what it's called? They don't have those filters. We do that, like she said, to protect them. That's what P.T.S.S looks like. It looks like, why are they coming outside? They know better to come outside in pajamas. That's what it looks like. Yeah, we tapping heads today. Because who taught you what it is to dress appropriately? Came from a dominant culture. She need to put some clothes on. Who taught you that? Because if you really want to know your history, I'm not going to go as far back as Greek and Roman culture and why women had to wear long clothes. But we'll talk about this country because it was about status. Because I could afford the fabric to wear long dresses and cover up. It was about status. Just like the history of social work. I say ashe, baby. See how they do? The history is who's worthy of my help and my charity. But we don't want to talk about that. How dare she shake her ass with nothing on? Well, you ain't traveled outside the borders of Western culture. Because we have been internally oppressed and internalized oppression, and so we do it to ourselves. How dare she come outside with bonnets? Our people been wearing bonnets for a long time, but you don't know your story because you learned his. That is what P.T.S.S looks like. And we walk in anger and conflict every day because we're walking with something running through our bloods and fighting something that is foreign to us, that's been conditioned in our body for over 400 or 500 years. Because wet don't recognize wetness. So if you're used to the dominant culture, until you feel that thing inside your bloodstream, toxic stress is passed down through hormones in our DNA. So it looks like being born with a dysregulated emotional control system. And we're using the same damn interventions that we've been taught on middle class folk that just wanted to sit on the couch and talk about their problems. Those interventions don't work for us because we're born with the dysregulated, those chemicals, that's the mental health 101 workshop, y'all call me. But it's a chemical that raises in our body when stress isn't activated. And we're born with that. That's why we're born to protect. We're born to fight and flight and freeze. So just talking to us, I don't understand your won't, because wet don't recognize wetness. We're gonna come back. That's a little bit about what P.T.S.
Did you want to add on as well?
To follow up on Isis Bey, what? So, I am Raquel Ward. I'm a licensed clinical addiction specialist, also a licensed clinical social worker. I work for a nonprofit full-time here in the city, but I also am part of a 7 all-women private practice here in the city. My undergrad degree is in African Diaspora Studies from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And so I heavily lean into that training. I have my master's degree from my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. So I'm an ultimate Detroit girl. So whole room in my house is devoted to my home city. I love Detroit. And so what I would say about P.T.S.S is there's this concept that we are kind of conditioned to of self-doubt, right? We don't know our greatness. It's almost like we're put under a spell. It's like they tried to, they erased our magnificent, so they erased that, and so therefore they can adopt their system. Read Willie Lynch, he had a whole, instruction of how to break us, right? So the Willie Lynch letter, his speech he did, and so they have indoctrinated us to have this self-doubt and not even to know who we are. And know that I always tell people in the Y, the staff from the Y that know me, they know I always say do an interview, go inside. So go inside and look at that internalized oppression. That's what P.T.S.S looks like, internalized oppression. And we need to go back and do that inner work, that interview, take an interview to know what genetically and we are predestined to be. We just have to tap in and get back to the original greatness that we were put on this earth to be. I'm Raquel Ward.
Thank you. I'm going to start back with you here in just a second. I think my voice might be loud enough too. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that was getting a little complicated. But thank you all for just layering on your own perspectives, right? I think the more that we hear different stories, different experiences, that's going to make it more powerful to understand what P.T.S.S is. And as I go into this next question, that's really centered around mental health and our needs as the Black community with mental health. I do want to layer in my own story because that condition, self-doubt that we have, I've been in therapy, have a Black female therapist my age. She's like my sister, right? Been with her for 7 years. It wasn't until I left corporate America that I realized I had another layer of self-doubt of how to step out on faith, how to understand how to build my own business, how to use my community, use my village. So I felt all of that as we went down the panel. But I do want to ask this one question, starting with Raquel. How important is it for us to understand those layers of trauma when we understand what exactly we need when it comes to talking about mental health and what we need to be looking for, seeking, asking for?
I think it's important to understand the layers of trauma and just going to the person, right? And get their definition of it. Are they even aware that they've experienced trauma?
Mm-hmm.
Are they even aware of the scientific nature of trauma, epigenetics, that it can be passed generationally, right? And so it's kind of like meeting the person where they are, but also helping them to discover, you know, what is that internalized, you know, trauma? You know, what has happened? What is it? And so, in my master's degree pro social work program at Wayne State University in Detroit, y'all get that? Drop that. In Detroit, we had to choose a concentration, right, for study. And my concentration was families and youth at risk, right? And so it's like looking at the family system and saying, in your family of origin, what are the epigenetics? What is the generational trauma that has been experienced? Are you even aware? Are you even aware that my grandmother, who came from Nashville, Tennessee to Detroit, and would never talk about the South, and why? My grandmother, who lived to 95 in Detroit, who never came back to the South, who also talked about black people and said, you don't buy stuff from black-owned businesses. And how that transpired throughout our family generations of, not me, I'm kind of disruptor in my family, right? And so, like, you know, how that translates. So in mental health, being able to walk with, not save anybody, not tell them what their problems are, like we have been trained, you know,
Right.
Not none of that. But just say, have you ever considered? Let's look at this. You know, social workers, we know they're teaching about genograms and echo maps and all that stuff. But go deeper. Don't just put some boxes and put an X in. Who's deceased? And was it a fragmented relationship? And you know, let's go into the trauma and the dynamics of the family system. So then we can help people with their mental health.
When you said the understanding of what that is, right? We're so busy trying to heal a thing, because trauma is not a thing. It's not an event. We have professionals, right? They're constantly talking about, it's this thing. Now that's the event. That's the life-threatening event. Trauma is the body's responses to that thing. And if we're too busy trying to heal the event that we can't, that's grief. Instead of the responses to the thing that has lived in our body, in our blood, right? It looks great when someone wrote the book, The Body Keeps Score. We get it then. But when we've been talking about it, when we've been saying, so that's what it looks like. When black folk tell you something, believe them. We've been saying this thing for centuries. We've been bringing our knowledge and our traditions for a long time. And then others come back and study us and then say it's evidence-based. I said what I said. Same thing with medicine. We've been healing for thousands of years. Europeans go study there, take the herbs, add chemicals, and call it medicine. And now it works. But them heathens been using it. Them roots and stuff. We've been drumming, using it for healing. It's been working. It regenerates the cells. It works for us, especially those with cancer. We don't say cancer patients. We don't stop putting stuff on people with our words and speaking things against people. But when someone else comes and do it, it says, look, it works. And if their skin is white, now there's evidence, and now the hospitals have drumming for patient or family members with cancer. That's how it impacts mental health. Cause we have been helping and healing for a long time and didn't believe in our own work, cause we've been told it don't work and there's something wrong with it. And it's a brain thing, y'all. It's not the magical Google and Miss Bey's and Mama Bey's opinion. You can look that up. It's the way the brain works. The brain stores unconscious stuff. I call it bringing from the back to the front. We can't change what's implicit. We have to make implicit explicit. And if that stuff is in our blood, what we've been doing is taking new information and just slapping it on. That's putting perfume on funk. It's still funky as hell. We have to unlearn. We have to disrupt and decolonize. Clean that shit out. We got to get it out. And that's rough. It don't feel so good. Because we've been trained through enslavement that it don't matter how you feel. Get back to work. Capitalism says your value and your worth is based on your productivity. You don't get to rest. So what do? I gotta hustle hard, y'all. I gotta work hard. And we've been passed down, if you work hard, you can achieve that American dream. And there's this internal conflict because our mind, body, and spirit don't work that way. We're like, something ain't right. Because there's people that work 10 times, and I work hard, y'all. And there's people that work way harder than me that's still not making it. Because we've been sold a lie and bamboozled. So in mental health, when we're talking about, we're in an individualistic culture. So we even approach our wellness through segregation. Our physical health, our dental health, our mental health, our spiritual health. We haven't even taken the journey of selfhood. To desegregate self. So how the hell do we expect society to do that? Because we have been separated. So how do we heal? We're not healing holistically. Trying to go get right over here. We're trying to go to spiritual over here. Because through our traditions, everything was all. There wasn't all these strong ethical boundaries. Don't you mix the two? Because Granddad was the healer, the bush doctor, and anybody else. And I dare you to question his intent. Hey, Auntie.
Hey, darling. How you doing?
That's the village. Come on, grand entrance, right? There was no, you know what? That's a conflict of interest. I know you better get some act right. If Granddad read this, he prescribed this, he said this, it meant this. And the collective understood that. So we didn't need the same type of boundaries as individualism need. Because we understood that our emotions was tied to our mental, tied to our spiritual, it was the collective work and collective healing. It wasn't segregated because we didn't value self over the collective. We value the whole. And so I am because of the whole, and the whole is because of I am. So mental health looks very different than what we see today. And we're in internal conflicts because of the conditioning and the brainwashing and the internalized oppression. And we don't approach mental health the same way. We sit down and say they gotta talk to us, and then we're upset, we are offended and have attitude because somebody don't wanna talk to us. Because we don't know how to sit in silence, because we're the experts. We know it all, we're the ones, and there's something wrong with them, and we determine our worth and value based on how they're healing. So then we want to take the credit and then give the dirt. Instead of, like she said, sitting with them and being a partner. Because we heal differently. It's in our blood. We're holistic people. We just don't always remember. Never forget to remember.
So I love where Isis ended, because, can everybody hear me? Okay, because it makes me wanna, ensure that we also focus in on the trauma of the ancestors. And so when you consider mental health, from an ancestral perspective, as far as enslaved Africans here in the United States, there were several disorders that were created specifically for Black people, Black enslaved people, back in the day. And so, one of those disorders was chondrochondriasis, which is when, Black women had their children ripped away from them, or their children were taken from them, and they expressed grief or pain or sorrow. They were considered to suffer from hydrochondriasis, because we weren't supposed to feel.
That's right.
Our ancestors were considered animals. They were not considered humans. And so there was a dehumanization process where they then created mental health diagnoses when we exhibited any type of emotion, okay? So hydrochondriasis was for Black mothers, or primarily Black mothers who expressed grief, because we weren't supposed to experience that. You also had a diagnosis for runaway slave syndrome. When enslaved people ran away, they were then diagnosed with a mental health disorder, because why would you run away when you got it so good? That was the perspective. You got everything you need. You got food, you got this, and not, mind you, not taking into account the fact that they're being overworked, they're being treated very badly, beaten, all kinds of stuff, right? And so they ran away for their freedom and for their safety, but they were diagnosed that they ran away, because why would you run away? You got it so good. So so if we go back to enslaved times here in America, Black people were taught to not express emotion, because if you expressed emotion, it devalued your worth.
That's right.
And then it caused you to then potentially have a mental health diagnosis, okay? Which means you're gonna be ripped away even further from your family and maybe killed. So we learned as a culture to not express what we were feeling, because it was not safe for us to say how we were feeling. It was not safe for us to express grief, to express pain, to say we're feeling depressed or anxious. We couldn't express that because it wasn't safe.
Right.
And now in society, it's gotten to a point where everybody wants us to talk about our feelings. You know, because we're supposed to talk about it.
Right.
But as a culture, we were trained to hold everything in, which is where you get the strong woman syndrome, where we hold in a lot and try to do it all, because that's how our ancestors were taught. And so that's the trauma, the multi-generational trauma that continues to exist within us today. That creates those barriers that people don't want to acknowledge, because there's a total erasure of our history. And the not acknowledging of those things. And so, yeah, the trauma still manifests. You know, I don't necessarily feel safe with everybody expressing how I feel, and I might not ever, and it's okay. And when it comes to mental health, you find someone who can handle all of you, that you can show up unapologetically with. So for instance, I was, you know, in recent conversations with clients, you know, we've had conversations and they say, you know what, I cannot stand these people today. I can't stand white people today, they piss me off. And it's okay for them to have that conversation with me, and they learn how to go back into those spaces and continue in those relationships, or continue in that space and have conversations. But they can talk about it, and they can be real about it, and they can express it in a safe place where they're not gonna be judged. And to me, that's culturally informed services, where you can unapologetically show up and not hide anything, and say what you wanna say, feel what you wanna feel, and I'm not gonna judge you, and I'm not gonna silence you, and I'm not gonna think something's wrong with you because of that.
Can we just, because, listen, when we talk about that, give her that clap. When you said that, today, we still pathologize someone expressing a thing. So now, right, as a trauma specialist, and this is, I forgot, y'all, I am a licensed therapist. All the things, right? When I was seeing, don't be laughing back. When I would see clients, and at our agency, because of the training and really recognizing and seeing what it is, we get a lot of pushback. Because from psychiatrists, from doctors, oh, they just therapists, they don't know what they're talking about. It ain't trauma, you bipolar. This is just labeling, just speaking things onto people, instead of us, because we see that lens, and we get it so often. And I was told by a psychiatrist, follow the money. Because it look different when you diagnosed with bipolar and some of the other ones, because that money and that medication look different. And we've seen it several times. They're just a therapist with no trauma training, No culturally responsive anti-racism training. And that diagnosis is right away. Well, wait a minute, they had, because we determine what their threat is. And the thing about trauma is, it's the perceived threat of the individual, not you. You don't get to determine if they felt threatened or not. And that's what we see through this diagnosis thing. Others determining if they experience trauma. So one of our youth, oh yeah, the trauma's for like veterans and stuff, because he was experiencing something after the George Floyd, and he has not been the same. He's a young black man, teenage black man. And to this day, he's been hospitalized over and over, and now, because the family has bought into that, because others and psychiatrists and doctors have said, no, he's got bipolar, because when he's feeling better and safer, when I feel safe, oh, he's manic, he's feeling great. And when he's not, see, he's in that is serious language that you said. Because I don't feel safe. And because I don't feel safe, my brain protects the thing, and I shut down, and I don't share a thing, then there's something wrong with you. They're antisocial. And then they line them up from the school to prison pipeline. They're oppositional. They're not angry. No, they're not angry. They're not triggered by anything. They're oppositional. And they have conduct issues. Not that they have a thing with authority because they've been harmed. It has not felt safe with adults and others that trigger. We constantly pathologize instead of apologize.
Can I answer that?
Yeah. Ain't no permission up in this place.
So as a therapist, so my practice primarily treats African Americans, and 85% of our practice is African Americans. We have all black female therapists, and there has been a pattern in my practice of black children being referred because people think they have ADHD.
Anybody else? Tired of seeing the letters and the alphabet, and they don't have a loss or separate cut.
All right, so let me tell you what we have found. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what we found, and I'm gonna tell you what the research says. So what we have found, I can't tell you how many black kids were referred for ADHD who were actually gifted. Now, we conducted a research study here in Mecklenburg County, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. It's published, and it was on the gifted gap, okay? And what we examined was the data about who is classified as gifted here in Mecklenburg County. Now, when you talk about that self-doubt, the brilliance, and all that stuff, right? 1 in 4 white kids in the county is identified as gifted. Now, this is data from a couple of years ago. 1 in 4, 3 out of 100 black kids.
Ooh, la 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 la
3
la la.
out of 100. So you mean to tell me 1 out of 4 white kids are brilliant or are gifted, and only 3 out of 100? And so we called it out, and we talked about how brilliance is not should not be biased. We are a brilliant people, but these diagnoses are used to reinforce our dehumanization, our lack of acknowledgement of our brilliance. And so we've been pushing our families. When they come in, we say, no, let's go back and ask the school and be tested for giftedness. Let's see if there's something, because these kids are so weak. I was seeing patterns. I was like, these kids are brilliant, and they were gifted, but they couldn't see that.
My son was actually in the gifted program, and his teacher tried to diagnose him as ADHD.
How teachers diagnosing? It's been happening. I get calls from teachers not gonna say where we got the same license.
Didn't happen.
I love y'all teachers, but y'all need to stop that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm internalizing all that too, trying to shift here, but actually going into the next question is actually perfect, right? Because it's about cognitive dissonance and how what we do versus how we perceive ourselves feel like 2 different things, right? So I'll preface it a little bit with my own story of being raised in a predominantly white town in the Northeast, then coming down here to A&T. Very 2 different things, right? So Okay, Aggie Pride. But I think for me, it wasn't until I got into corporate, I was in sales, I was one of the diversity implants, right, during Black Lives Matter. I was in. Yeah, and then I had, it was a couple of us, so it was.
Diversity implant, that's good. I like that.
And then did some other HR work during the pandemic, including mental health, because I'm such an advocate, right? And then when I thought back of all that I did, when we think about the self-doubt, I think about, I took some notes here, right, of just kind of being that threatening, I had a baby face going into corporate, taking these jobs that people were going for years. So I had 10 years of those kind of jealous looks at me. I had the transparency of how I felt, feeling like I was in a safe space, but not having the protection that I thought I was gonna get being in that safe space. And then I get to the other side of this and I start my healing journey and I realize those layers go back to be like childhood, right? So for me, I'm like, I've been layering on top of all of this for 32 years. And it's probably like one of the scariest places to be in life right now, to be like, you've made all these decisions but never really knew who you were. So I want to start with Isis, and I'll give it to all three of you, because it's been a great conversation, whoever wants to answer. But what role does that difference of action versus self-perception and all that we're doing in our various lives, our various experiences, right, you will need some more. What role does that play in the erasure of slavery's true impact on us as Black Americans?
Yeah. So, cognitive dissonance. Let's talk about what that is, because I think oftentimes people confuse it. Cognitive dissonance is a thing where we have these thoughts. You know how like grandma and them told me that I'm supposed to wear my pants this way. No, baby. So research said, and we have evidence, because grandma and them said, and her grandma and them said, that this the way we supposed to do it. And we talk about that internal conflict. So society in them said, and they in them said, and history books in them said, and institutions in them said, but I have evidence right here to tell you that that could be harmful. So it's when I have these thoughts and these beliefs and these patterns, and when presented with evidence that might bring ambivalence to it, I struggle. And it becomes an internal struggle. To the point, I might go even harder, like that trauma bonding where I'm gonna protect the abuser. It goes that far. And now because I have to protect an identity that's been passed to me, because that means something. Grandma and them means something. I've been born and raised in this society. The American dream means something to me, and it's been a part of my identity. So giving that up means that's grief work I wasn't ready for, because it's serving a need. And so I'm gonna go even harder to protect this thing. Does everyone understand that cognitive dissonance? And when you said that, something just in my heart, when you was talking about school and the quota thing, right? So major. Because we have bought into that. And what that looks like and how cognitive dissonance is showing up today. Major one that's impacting our community, and we talk about the crabs in the barrel, and we don't know how to stick together. Why this culture gets, because of that. It's been a culture instilled and conditioned in us. This the one, y'all ready? Hold on to your edges, y'all. Biggest thing in our community is this spiritual division. Because let me see if this sounds familiar. There's only one right way to do this. And if you don't, something wrong with you. You ain't gonna make it. You got all them problems because you don't believe like I do. There's only one inferior way to believe. Sound like enslavement, y'all? Cognitive dissonance. Because we can't connect that, because we have been in survival mode. And there's nothing wrong with how I believe. It's just when we make what I believe the only right way and the inferior way. That is what internalized oppression has done in cognitive dissonance, because we disconnected the fact that it's the same damn thing. And it's a major one, y'all. Especially in our community. Because oppression, power, and control has taught us individualism, black or white thinking, wrong or right. Internally and in our blood, it says the end. It's what's harmful or helpful at the moment because of the collective. Because you can be doing great work, but if you don't believe like me, it's, child, I don't know. Not that you're a great person and you believe differently. And don't convince me now, I don't have to have the same, but we can still have the same goal. We can still work together for the greater good of our community, and we can still put policies or things in our community in place to not harm someone else. That's a major cognitive dissonance for us as black and brown people, because we took the dominant cultures. They took our resources and left us with their religion. And ain't nothing wrong or right about it. It's when we say what is wrong or right for everybody. It is the same thing that has happened to us through enslavement. Instead of, it's the end. It ain't for me. It's like, yeah, they family, but you can't make the potato salad. So I ain't with me. I don't eat raisins in my shit. Okay? But you're not harming me because you got raisins. I'm not gonna eat it. I choose. Now, if you're trying to poison me, we gonna holler. Cognitive dissonance, right? Because I love the fancy words, but we have to understand it in our bones and understand it in real human form. That's major for us. Understanding how oppression has really done a thing to us and how we believe and how we think. Because like she said, we don't believe we can. Every day I'm hearing I can't. You a lie. You may not know how. You may not know the resources, but why do we constantly say I can't? When I don't know how. I don't know how yet. We say I'm bipolar. You a lie. You don't say I'm cancer. We say I'm broken. Who? Who's broken? I'm sorry. You're not sorry. Stop being sorry. That's what they told you. You can apologize, my bad, excuse me. Why are we sorry? She talked about not being able to express emotions, y'all. Y'all hear me every day. I'm gonna disrupt that to the end of my days. I feel like cognitive dissonance in our language. We're very passive and passive-aggressive in our language. I feel like you weren't listening to me. You a la 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 la. That ain't a damn feeling word. Let's go over the feelings wheel. I feel hurt. I feel disappointed because I believe or I think, and we say that every day and reinforce it in our brain. It's a brain thing. Cognitive dissonance. No matter how much we're taught, we still do that thing. Cognitive dissonance. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you a lie. I do mean to interrupt you. Excuse me, do you have a moment? It's the most passive aggressive, especially in corporate, and particularly by white males. It's been passed down, and it happens with women. I don't mean to be rude, but you a lie. I don't mean to offend you, that everyone gets upset. You're right, but you can't. I own my feelings. You don't have that right. You don't have that power over me. We believe we can't. We believe we can't control our emotions. We believe we can't control our thoughts. That's cognitive dissonance, because we really can. It's a brain thing. It's unlearning and retraining the brain. And we can take our power back. But we believe the self-doubt, that our brilliance trying to hide it. Man, that take up space. Take up space, sis. Take up space. I've been told to turn it down, tune it down. You're doing too much most of my life. But see, I values me now. I bet you won't say that to me no more, because I'll be ready. Cognitive dissonance. Don't come for me. She said, don't come for me. Cause that's a lot. La, 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 la.
I'll just do it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And I was just doing a quick time check, and I do want to hit these other two questions that we have, and hopefully hear from all three of you, because I think they're very powerful.
Go
I think there's some of it that we've talked about already, but then some I think we're just gonna add on to be a good close to the conversation. But the first is just thinking about our village and the people we come in contact with every day, whether that be personally, professionally, right? What role can individuals, so ourselves, our families, our communities, different institutions that we're involved in, what can they do to really help us think through the impact and the effects of P.T.S.S? What are the conversations we need to be having? What are the things that we need to be thinking about when we are taking up space in these spaces? And whoever wants to be
Stay quiet after she give me the marker.
I'm looking for the marker. Wait a moment.
I got a marker.
Mm.
I got a pen, but
got a
everybody
pen.
can't see it.
Oh, you got a marker.
Go ahead.
Ask the question again.
Yes. All good. So what role can individuals, families, communities, and institutions play as we're having conversations like this?
So I think that part,
Yes.
that interview, right, that interview, and once you do the interview, I think, you know, she talks a lot about it in the book, and I have practiced it in my own life, is the children.
Mm-hmm.
Because our parenting, our interpersonal relationships have been affected, impacted, and so our children. So I'm not waiting on a teacher or a school to teach our history and our brilliance.
That part.
I have two daughters. One of my proudest roles is I'm a mother, you know.
Where you at
Sierra,
over there? Where she
Sierra,
at?
we're over there. Hey, little bit. She's probably online.
That's my baby.
So my baby is 26, and then my oldest is 30. My 26-year-old graduated from UNCG. She's back at home after getting a graduate certificate. My oldest was graduated from Howard, was in DC, went to LA. Now she's somewhere. So they will tell you they grew up in a household where they had Raquel 101. So I didn't wait on no school. So Raquel 101. So they were little, and so they knew depictions were around our home, stories, events, cultural events. I told them our history. And the reason why I told them our history, because my parents told me our history. Being from Detroit's a whole different beast. You know, we know about the race riots in Detroit. We know people say Detroit 99.9% black. You know, it's like they say DC is chocolate city. Okay.
About Detroit, if y'all know nothing else, don't you ever say nothing around her with Detroit.
Right, and so I was raised in a household where our culture and our history was appreciated and highlighted. My parents told us about when the Black Panthers, and they fed the Black Panthers. They told us about Motown sound and played music, and they played it in our household. They made us proud to be black, y'all, and that's a fact, y'all. You know, and so our children. So that generational pride and that generational strength came from my parents. Thank you, my mom, Bernetta, Dr. Apostle Bernetta Atman, who was an executive director of the YWCA in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But my father is still alive, living in Detroit. So I give gratitude to them. So they passed it to me. I passed it to my children. I passed it to my nieces and nephews. I'm telling you, my nieces and nephews, they can say, she's a disruptor. And I would head wrap, red, black, and green medallions. I would get put out of jobs, put out of hospitals when my sister was giving birth because of the treatment she was receiving. Because I'm going to disrupt. I'm going to speak up. There was a time, because of trauma, that I did silence myself, my throat chakra. And it was all clogged up. But I had to release it. I had to release it and say my greatness. And I'm not going to buy into making myself small. I'm not going to attach myself to, Don Ruiz talks about the 4 agreements. I don't agree. I don't agree, because I am great. I am brilliant. I got T's because I was a smart kid. It's okay. It's okay, and it's okay to come from Detroit and be proud of my blackness and who I am. It's okay to pop on during COVID with my head wrap on, and they're like, "Oh, you look different." Or braids. Or braids. Can I touch it? Are you going to a wedding? What? So with the children, and so I am, I teach Sunday school in the only African-American Catholic church right down the street from here, right down the street from here, and so I disrupt. I want those kids to be critical thinkers. So what they gonna talk about in church, Miss Raquel gonna come in there with some Aztec clay and say, we gonna make clay bags. We gonna do our indigenous rituals, and I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna bring some incense and some Palo Santo okay? Where did everything start? North Africa, right? So it's disruption. It starts with the kids only after you do your self-work.
Yes, okay, so self-work, yes to all of that. And I would say the other part is, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the YMCA, the Stratford Richardson YMCA, speaking to their youth group. And I have funded research through the National Institutes of Mental Health, where we're creating a suicide detection and intervention model for Black youth. So we're creating it here, working with collaborators from North Carolina A&T.
It's groundbreaking.
Yeah, University of Central Florida.
It ain't been done before.
Yeah, it hasn't been done. So we met with a group of Black youth, because we are getting feedback from Black youth here in Mecklenburg County, Black youth, Black parents, Black providers, Black community members, about what's working and what's not working when it comes to mental health interventions. And we were talking to this group, and this kid in the group, Black male, had a hoodie on the entire time. And towards the end of our session, because we were talking about mental health and stuff like that, towards the end of our session, he raises his hand. And he says, and it got very quiet in the room, and he said, why do you all even care about us? Nobody cares about us. A room of all Black youth here in Mecklenburg County said, why do you even care about us? That has stayed with me. Everybody felt that in that moment. And it was an awakening for me to, again, unapologetically prioritize the needs of Black youth in this county. And not just even in this county, in the world, because their needs have not been prioritized. They are typically an afterthought. So let's create these evidence-based interventions, and then later, let's figure out if they work and adapt. But meanwhile, the providers have to do the evidence-based interventions that have not been tested on people who look different or who have different experiences. And so that was profound to me when he said that. So how can we help get rid or eliminate some of the effects of P.T.S.S? We prioritize Black populations. They're not an afterthought. We consider their needs. We advocate for their needs. We always invite or partner with them on projects. We don't run from their greatness. We don't try to minimize their greatness when they show up. We allow them to fully exist and to fully thrive. That's some of the way that we begin to do these things. And we continuously make sure we prioritize them and their needs, because this has not happened. The other thing that we do to get rid of the effects of P.T.S.S is we need to eliminate the saviorism complex. The need to not allow Black people to feel. So my same niece, when we're on this trip and she gets her results, she's angry and she's pissed. And she should be, because it's a racist test that she was never meant to pass. So she's pissed, and the entire time, my parents are like, oh, don't worry about it. You can take it again, and it's gonna be okay. And she's getting madder and madder. And I finally said to my parents, y'all just be quiet. Like, let her sit in it. It's okay for her to sit. It's okay for her to feel that. And they my parents know I'm a disruptor too. But my parents they were respectful of that. And they left her alone. And guess what? She was able to regulate herself, and she was able to come back because she was allowed to feel. Yeah. But oftentimes, particularly in our own community as Black people, we don't want other Black people to feel. And that goes back to slavery.
so we gotta allow people to feel, and it's okay for them to feel. And then they learn how to self-regulate, because we don't have to fix it. And if they feel like they need some assistance, then they reach out for help. But we gotta stop trying to save them and think that we're doing something for them when we're actually just causing more harm. Would you like to add?
Oh, man. So,
Look, I felt it in the.
so one thing, right, because I'm going back to a space when you realize, you don't realize how much you disrupt me, and I was like, I don't. So one thing that I am gonna we're not gonna allow them to feel. That word, right? As professionals, we said we give permission to. I allow them to. I give them voices, I speak for them. We empower others. You allow, because you don't have the power to give us. So let's start with disrupting that language. We write into all of our writing and our grants and our funding, because this is we're great work and we're gonna change lives. You're changing their lives. I hear people just in the meeting, oh, I love the great word because we're changing lives. We just took credit for them making the change instead of supporting them to change. We empower others. No, we help support and allow others to empower them, not allow, how disrupt, right? How so implicit it is. We can offer, give a space for them to empower themselves because they have the power.
Right.
That's so major with this. Starting with the self-work, disrupting our own stuff. I don't usually say stuff, y'all. Oh, Auntie heard this voice. She probably got one of our On My Shit shirts. Those shirts sell out real fast. So we have to be very mindful because we're saying the thing, we say it to be politically correct, but that means we're still saying it up here. That is our first voice. No matter what language you speak, you're speaking it here. I hear a lot of, right, what we don't realize, because wetness don't recognize as wet, a fish out of water. When we talk about pride, Aggies was like, yeah, you see that? We're going to support that pride. You know why that's so strong? Because it wasn't allowed. When we do that work and we ask dominant culture, particularly white people, there's not that there. We're like, we love our music, we love our culture, we love our hair, we love our style. And everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. It's because there were so many restrictions on being able to feel. We do it today. Master's house, don't you speak so loud, mind your mouth, because we all gonna get killed. They'll kill us all. We'll all get whooped. So today, be quiet. Don't go disrupting today. Oh, Mama Isis, please don't cut up today. I hear it. I get texts, calls, inboxes. What you gonna do today? Because we don't want to. And I do. I had to go on national TV and in front of 600 people. I said, you sure? You told the folk who you called in here today? And I still am like, damn. But it's something that we don't do that with. Don't you do that so we can get free? Won't you speak up so we can all get free? Don't you do that, cause so we were collective. We know how to be collective. The conditioning was to be collective, to shrink, to downplay, to hide, to stay safe. So we keep speaking the words that we don't know how to unite and be collective. That's a damn lie. It's a lie. Look at the cheerleader. He does a great chair. I love it. It's the cheerleader that talks about lies. He do a whole chair for you. Lie, 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 lie. But we speak against ourselves. And the power of the word, I don't care what spiritual system you believe in, you'll hear about the power of the tongue. But we don't walk it like we're talking. We say a thing to sound, to appease. We have books that we study to say, corporate, how to get people to like you. That's called power and control. I'm acting, thinking, talking, walking to get someone to like me, to get someone to believe me. We gotta disrupt that. Disagreement don't equate being unheard. Because if if you don't agree with me, is you're not listening. You a lie. I heard you. I don't agree. There's a lot of power and control. I have a voice, whether you listen to it or not. Don't speak for me. If I tell you I'm uncomfortable with something, don't respond to me saying, I understand you feel stressed out. I told you how I felt. If I told you I felt uncomfortable, that don't equate stress. Believe me when I tell you how I feel. We're trained. Oh, we name feelings for people as helpers and healers. I notice right now you're looking overwhelmed. That's how I look. What do overwhelmed look like? How about, I noticed that you sat back, you moved to the side, you put your hand on your heart. Tell me about that. Could you share with me, if you're okay with sharing what is showing up for you? How do you feel? We're great at naming feelings and we do it to our babies. Stop it, you're getting frustrated. Did they tell you they was frustrated? They can be embarrassed. They can be disappointed, overstimulated, hurt, but we're just named it frustrated. And as helpers and healers, we become the experts and constantly name how other people feel. Power and control. The need for power and control. Relationships. Well, I did it because I didn't want to, nobody, then that's trying to control somebody. I said what I said. What you do with it is your business. And y'all, not or. And I'm mindful of the space that I'm in. I'm mindful because I have good intentions and good intentions harm. So it mean I don't care how it shows up on land. I'm still not responsible for how you perceived it. And we're often trying to control, we're trying to say a thing so that, well, I'm trying to make you understand. You can't make nobody understand a thing. We want to make them feel safe. You can't make nobody feel safe. And that's been the problem. We're still trying to make and convince. How do we know who to work with? Work with those, find your tribe. Stop trying to convince everybody. Difference is okay. That's why racism is perpetuated and oppression. Because we so focused on policies and procedures to make somebody act, to make somebody like us. Calling somebody a nigga and all that ain't racism, y'all. That's personal beliefs and attitudes. We want to make somebody, we want to shut people down because they're a politician and they change their damn, so what? That's different. Is it going to change the way I grow my own food? Is it going to change the way I instill my own cultural pride? Because we're looking for somebody else to do it for, somebody to come and save us. You are who you've been waiting for. Let's disrupt that. You are who you've been waiting for. Take your power back. I can't. You can. You choose. I didn't have a choice. You're a lie. You didn't like your choices. But you still choose. There's folk who know they're going to go to jail after they steal. They chose. We all choose. We've been conditioned that we don't have a power. When we do this and recognize our power and we take that shit on back, it changes things, y'all. That's why they get nervous. That's why they continue to divide racially. The construct, the thing that they made up, that y'all bought into and been bamboozled. That's why we shrink our babies. That's why we have to downplay things. Because we don't believe in our own power. And that starts with self-work. Take it back. Take up space. And you see it. Start getting shaky around here. Stop trying to shut down people because they different. I welcome difference. Because guess what? You just taught me how to navigate and navigate better. Thank you. Because I don't know it all. Culturally humble means I'm a student. I'm not culturally competent. How dare anybody else think they can be competent in somebody else's culture? I'm humble. Teach me. I don't mind difference. because your difference don't intimidate or threaten my existence. That comes from enslavement. Being different. I don't know, the way Harriet, with her original name, the way her prayers are, it scares me. That's how psychological warfare and power and control happened. Because it wasn't because it was, the numbers of power was there. It was because we believed that. I'm gonna harm you in front of everyone to instill fear. So you know not to rise up. It's the same thing with power and control. The abuse cycle doesn't happen with violence. It starts with psychological and emotional. Last resort is violence because you didn't listen in the first place. So now I'm gonna use violence. But we forgot that because it's so segregated and so disconnected that the power and control is the same society we live in. It's a power and that's why it's so familiar with us. That's why we get into these power and control relationships, because we live in a power and control society. It's been passed down through the DNA. It's our norm. I'm used to the honeymoon cycle. I got my stimulus. Y'all wrote Black Lives Matter on the floors. It feels great. Ain't no damn policy change. We keep telling women don't go around that cycle no more. Ass is going around the hamster wheel over and over. No policy changes, no changes, because we don't want to speak up. But when this city burned and this country burned, things got changing real quick. But that means fear. Don't say that word. You're inciting violence. No, that's what you interpreted, and that's what you use to come back, to retaliate. When we talk about the truth of things, we go around that hamster wheel, around the hamster wheel. Things get a little shaky, we're walking on eggshells until the explosion. Once that happens, we know it's normal. So every time we see it in the news, we get sensationalized, we follow, we change our little pictures to something and look great. Hashtags. Black folk have been a collective folk. We show up for every other advocacy, social justice, and we be like, where are the folk when it's time to advocate for us? Where they at? Because we've been collective, but we bought into the thing we're not. But we show up for everyone else and still can't figure out why everybody ain't showing up for us. And that's something? We still asking the same question, but we don't read the papers, we don't read the evidence, we done documented it, we don't publish papers over and over, we still put money to research the same old shit that we got the answers to. That's why, because we rather you keep researching and going around that cycle. And each time we go around that cycle, we get more and more dangerous. You know, the 7 to 10 times on average for us to leave, we still going around that cycle. Because we trauma bonded with the oppressor, y'all. We trauma bonded with an oppressive system. Because we'll defend that system through cognitive dissonance. But you know, because it still serves a need, we have not moved towards self-sufficiency. Because we don't believe. We don't believe, our self-doubt, we can't, that codependency, system ain't broken, it's designed to do exactly what it was designed to do. We keep reforming and not dismantling. Keep adapting and not creating. Every institution was based off white female dominant culture. The Americans don't. Stay in the line, don't cross out, stay walking the line, don't color outside the lines, color in the box, stay in the box, I don't fit in the box. Take up space. I shall.
Well, I'm gonna go into our last question.
I'm gonna be quiet.
And do you wanna do, I'll do the last question, or how do you wanna?
Because y'all have been like, woo, just kidding.
Yeah.
But.
They have questions.
No, the last question, is very much so tied to this audience.
Oh, perfect, so go ahead.
So we can ask this audience question, and this will be our wrap-up question for tonight. Y'all, thank y'all so much. We appreciate y'all for being here. The question is in relation to corporate America, right? I knew y'all would be like, What role should DEI play in identifying the awareness of trauma, and P.T.S.S in the workplace? So.
Say that one more time, say it out loud. let's see if you hear yourself. Whoever asked
What
the question.
role should DEI,
What's DEI for the folks?
diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, depending on how you move those letters around, play in identifying the awareness of trauma, post-traumatic slave syndrome in the workplace?
Real briefly, that DEI is the money to do the quota, what you talking about, the diversity
Yep.
implant. That's what it's done. And I'm saying,
And to recognize the trauma that you even have to have a DEI,
Yeah.
the
It starts there.
separateness of that.
It starts.
You know, I worked for a major hospital system here in the city for 10 years, and we had a diversity day, and it was hard to get in. Everybody would be up on their computer like, I wanna get a seat, I wanna get a seat. And that was at a hotel, was a huge, one of the largest hospital systems in Southwest. So even to have that is an issue. So recognizing that.
policy requires us to recognize, so behaviors, we gotta control behaviors, cause, you know.
So we published, myself and a group of Black researchers published an article maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. It was called Shamed into Action. And it was about the social work profession and how following the death of George Floyd, how our profession was shamed to act. So they were shamed into action. And part of the premise of the article talks about how there's been the movement of calling it DEI, but not really calling it what it needs to be called. And so instead of saying words like anti-racist or anti-racism, anti-oppression, we go with more politically correct, kind words, such as diversity, equity, inclusion. So we talk about the need to resist the kind words and really call it what it is. We're trying to create movement for anti-racism, trying to create movement for inclusion of intersectional identities in workplaces. And so as a result of that work, it was referenced as part of the rationale for social work adding in anti-racist standards into the national accreditation standards. So now in social work, we have anti-racism standards, and it's called anti-racism. It's not diversity, equity, and inclusion. So my thing for corporations and people doing DEI work, if you're gonna do DEI work, that's real cute. But if you're gonna do anti-racism, anti-oppression work, and work that's actually gonna change policies and stuff, then you need to call it what it is, and really call it out. So that's kind of just my thoughts on that piece.
Thank you for that question.
Can I ask the audience a question?
Sure, we for like, 2 minutes.
What are you all willing to do? Y'all asking us questions. This is great information. When we call this self-work, they said that woman right there made me a shirt that says, accountability is my love language. Everybody in here has information. Everybody in here made an effort to get here. What are you all gonna do? What are you walking away with and committing to today? Because when they say, well, you know better, you do better. What are you all gonna do? Because I'm doing my part. I think they're doing theirs. You all is in the village. We're not gonna sit here and wait for us and those of us that's speaking for us to do this. You are who we've been waiting for. You are who you've been waiting for. You got family next to you. Look at somebody, speak to somebody before you walk out this door, connect and say, I need an accountability partner. Because this is what I'm gonna do today to disrupt the thing. Starts with self. If I'm just not gonna say this, I'm gonna say how I feel every day. I'm not gonna say I think and I thought, I feel this. If I'm gonna speak up, I'm gonna use my voice. Whatever it is, it starts with you. Not waiting on somebody else to save us, save you. It takes a village, y'all. I am because we are because I am. Let's say that. I am because we are. We are because I am. So let's finish that with giving them time to figure out what you're gonna walk away and do today.
Just a final word from our CEO, Peterson. You're gonna walk up super quickly.
Wow, a heartfelt thank you to our moderator, Ashley Peterson, to Dr. Sonya Richardson,
of the YWCA on the Phyllis Wheatley branch and helped form the Y-Teens program that really flourished there. She established, if you don't know this, a mobile books program to improve access to reading materials within the Black and Brown community, which was really crucial before the library integrated in 1956. And she was one of the most important figures in our local civil rights movement. So we're just grateful for her affiliation with the YWCA and learning of Raquel Ward's mother's affiliation with the YWCA. I love that. Most importantly, we appreciate you all for making the time to be here with us this evening. We hope that you will join us later this summer when we have a pop-up discussions around the 1619 project. You'll be on our email list, so you look out for those communications from our awesome philanthropy team. I have a shout out from my team to please invite people to take hoagies as they leave. You might have someone at home thinking, I wonder what I'm having for dinner, and now they know. So we appreciate you all, and we wish you all safe travels as you head home. Thanks for being here today.